Hi, it's Dr. Eric Robbins from Los Angeles, California. I'm a urologist and a mind-body expert. And the topic of today's discussion is called The Magic of John Sarno and Gay Hendricks. And both those guys have been teachers who were invaluable to me. So I'll tell you a story. Back about 17 years ago, I first started work as a new urologist, and I was working in a big medical group. And it was a partnership, which meant, you worked there for 2 or 3 years and they liked you, they'd have to vote you in as a partner. And about 3 months after I started working there, I started having some back pain. So my back felt tense a lot, and sometimes I'd do something stupid like bend down and pick up a paper clip, and my back could feel tweaked from that. And I was thinking to myself at the time, why would bending down to pick up a paper clip throw your back out unless maybe the back muscles are tense and tight to begin with? And they're just, and I knew that to be true. Sometimes I get out of bed and the back just felt so tight after a full night's sleep, and I started asking myself, what the heck is going on? 3 months after I got into private practice, I was driving down the road and there was a single car accident. This car swerved off the road and hit a tree and flipped over, and the passenger cab was crushed. The guy who was driving the car got out, but his girlfriend was trapped in the car. She's unconscious. The passenger space was crushed. There was very little space in there. There's fuel leaking out of the truck, and she was alive, but the way she was laying, her chin was tucked into her chest, and it was cutting off her airway. So when we talk about someone swallowing their tongue, that's what happens. Anyway, so I needed to get on my hands and knees and crawl into the very confined space of the passenger truck, and then I was leaning over and I had to extend my hands to kind of extend her jaw and stabilize her cervical spine and keep her jaw thrusted out to keep her airway open, and that's what was keeping her alive. Now, the problem was that whoever called the fire department gave them the wrong directions, and so I was stuck in that incredibly cramped position for about, seems like 10 or 15 minutes, and my back just had no stability at all. And when after the fire department got there, I was able to get out of the cab and I couldn't stand. My back was just in spasm. I didn't know what I did to it. We drove right home, and I took a couple buddies to even get me upstairs to the bedroom, and it was some of the worst pain I've ever felt in my life. I remember I had it took me like an hour to get from the bed and go about 15 or 20 feet to even get to the restroom. So I've had very, very real pain. And the problem is the pain wasn't going away. I can remember a few days went by, someone prescribed me some muscle relaxants and some Vicodin, and pain wasn't getting better. And 4 or 5 days later, the pain was barely getting better. And I went to a chiropractor, but he told me the injury was too acute to work on it. Finally, after a week, got to the point that I could stand, and I had to go back on some limited duty. And I'm thinking to myself, God, these guys in my medical group, I'm a new guy starting out. There's, my back keeps going out. There's no way they're going to want to hire me, some dude with a bad back. So because of the pain and because of the fear, quite frankly, of losing my job, I was very motivated to figure out what was going on with my back pain. Now, I'm a doctor, but I don't like going to doctors. A lot of them are my friends. Like to keep it that way, schmoozing with them at dinner parties. I don't like seeing the doctors professionally. I'm not that crazy about what we do to folks in the field of medicine. So, I knew if I went to the doctor, it wasn't getting better. He'd order an MRI scan. They might offer me some epidural injections. There might be talk of doing back surgery, and I just didn't want any part of any of that. So I'm sure a lot of you out there with musculoskeletal pain. And by the way, guys, when I'm talking about back pain here, as you'll see in a minute, it's not just back pain. It's lower back pain. It could be neck pain. It could be, shoulder pain, going down your buttocks, any of those things. Chronic musculoskeletal pain is what we're talking about. So when I was trying to help myself heal from this in a more natural way, somebody turned me onto a book by a guy named Dr. John Sarno. And Sarno is, he's a professor of physical medicine at New York University. At least he was back then. I think he retired in his 80s. And I bought Sarno's book called Healing Back Pain, and I realized that Sarno was seeing the worst chronic pain patients in the world, and I used his techniques to help heal myself. So I'd like to share those with you and give you a first-hand account of the potential what Sarno's work can do, as well as, again, some just personal input since I used the techniques myself. So Sarno used to see the worst chronic pain patients in the world. Most of Sarno's patients literally had their pain from anywhere from 5 to 30 years. Most of them had already had one or multiple surgeries. They'd already been through the gamut of epidural injections. They had been through years of physical therapy. So if that group that was the worst of the worst group, and by the way, Sarno talks about in his book that all his patients had, kind of quote, a real good reason for their pain. I mean, forklift truck fell on them, or a 747 jet ran them over, or, they were in a 10-car pileup, and all his patients, their x-rays looked like the Elephant Man. So again, clearly there was kind of a quote-unquote a good reason why they should have their pain. Now, the interesting thing about Sarno is in an academic setting, and I think I talked to him on the phone one time, he said he had seen maybe 12,000 patients. With this worst patient population that anyone gets, Sarno had a 70% cure rate. 70% cure rate. An additional 15% of his patients, the worst of the worst people in the world that no one had been able to help, an additional 15% were much improved, meaning I think 15 to 80% improved, something like that. So the question is, how is Sarno getting these amazing results, especially where no one else was able to get these results? So I'd like to explain the model that Sarno used here. So, how Sarno got his amazing results, really, is he used to bring people in for 2 lectures. What Sarno would explain in his lectures is this. Sarno would say, listen, most people come to Sarno and they say it's this back problem going on. Most people, they're having back pain, go to the doctor, and the doctor orders an MRI scan, and it shows an anatomic finding, like a slip disc, spinal stenosis, spinal arthritis, degenerative joint disease, and usually the standard medical profession says, those are the reasons why you're having your pain. Now, the interesting thing is that Sarno looked at the literature, and he said, look, if you take 100 middle-aged people with no pain, you take 100 middle-aged people who are not having back pain, and you do an MRI scan on them, 65% of them have a slip disc or spinal arthritis or spinal stenosis, and they're not having pain. So Sarno said 90 to 95% of the time, it's not the things that we see on x-ray that's causing back pain. Okay? Now, so Sarno would then try to explain what is causing the pain, and Sarno said that what's causing the pain in the majority of people is chronic tension and spasm of the muscles of the back, neck, shoulders, buttocks, this type thing. And for example, you can imagine a muscle in your lower back clamped down on the sciatic nerve and sending pain down the butt into the leg and mimicking sciatica. But instead of a disc pushing on that nerve, it's just some tight muscles. And Sarno, for example, said that these muscles are chronically tightly clamped down. The blood can't flow into the muscle as easily. There's a relative lack of oxygen in the muscle, and he said it hurts like crazy. So Sarno's taking a mind-body approach, but he's not saying that people are crazy and the problems in their head. He's saying the muscles are chronically tensed and tight, sometimes for years or decades, and there's a real reason for the pain. I want to make that clear. But the higher level question that Sarno looked at, he asked, why would someone have chronically tensed or spastic muscles in these parts of the body? And this is the model that Sarno came up with, and I'll add some of my own insights to that as well. This is what Sarno found. Sarno said that most of us grow up, and in our family of origin, we learn at a certain level, at a certain unconscious level, that it's not okay to feel and express certain things, particularly anger or anxiety. And by the way, guys, this happens in relatively normal families. Your family doesn't need to be a bunch of devil cult worshipers for you to kind of get these subtle messages. The kid learns at a certain level, it's not okay to feel or express anger or anxiety. And then Sarno says, of course, we grow up and we get out of our house, and life's going to elicit anger or anxiety. And Sarno says that for a lot of us, when these feelings start to come up from our body, the brain says, whoa, wait a minute, it's not okay to feel those things. That's not what kept you safe when you were young. Sarno says the brain will cause the muscles to spasm, to cause a pain, to take your mind off what you're angry or anxious about. My own interpretation of this is a little bit different. I think that our thoughts and emotions and past memories are held in the body, and as those things and feelings start to come up from the body into our conscious awareness, the brain says, wait, it's not okay to feel those things. And I think the brain causes the muscles to tense up to hold the emotions inside so they don't come up to our conscious awareness. But either one of these, you end up with chronic muscular tension and spasm. How Sarno used to get his amazing cure rates with the worst patients in the world is he'd bring people in for 2 lectures. The first lecture, he'd say, listen, It's not, for example, the slip disc that's causing your pain. Stop babying your back. It's not the spinal stenosis. It's not, the stuff that they see in the MRI scan. The vast majority of the time is not what's causing your pain, because the majority of normal people with no pain have these same findings on the MRI scan. Sarno would then explain, Sarno would say, listen, when you're having pain, you have to ask yourself, I wonder what I'm angry or anxious about. You have to ask yourself, I wonder what I'm angry or anxious about. So, I read Sarno's book. At the time, I'll be honest, I was extremely dissociated, meaning I was not in touch with my body or my emotions at all at that time. And I began to notice that almost invariably, right before my back would go out, I'd have a half a millisecond thought in my brain about something I was worried about with my wife or kid. And I actually needed a little bit of therapy to kind of figure out what I was thinking, what I was feeling, bring my attention back into my body. That reminds me of an interesting quote by Milton Erickson, who was one of the greatest medical hypnotists in the world. And Erickson said, quote, "Your patients will be your patients because they're out of rapport with their unconscious mind," unquote. Meaning, your patients will be your patients because they're out of rapport with their unconscious mind, which is the feeling mind, which is the part of our mind that's held in the body, that's attached to how we're feeling, that's attached to our emotional truth, that type thing. And I was very dissociated from that. But one thing I'll notice is, I began to notice as I did some work on myself, is that I had a lot of fear coming up concerning my relationship with my wife, Linda. Now, I remember having a lot of thoughts at the time that were just these overwhelming thoughts. Like, I'd have thoughts like Linda's not smart enough. I had thoughts that she's too fear-based, she's too insecure, this or that, okay? Now, if you've ever heard that expression, all perception is projection, we're getting to that part of my talk. Anyway, I had these really overwhelming thoughts because I began to think to myself, I can't let myself feel this fear and think these things about my wife because, well, there's a few reasons. A, I said, my parents were divorced, and I swore I'm never going to get divorced, and if I allow myself to feel these things, that's the end of the marriage. Or I'd say, you know what, financially, I'm a surgeon doing pretty well. There's going to be huge financial implications if we split up. So again, you can kind of see the underlying belief that if I allow myself to feel anything, it's going to lead to the end of the marriage. And that created, again, a tremendous amount of fear. I said we have a young kid involved, that type of thing. I said I've been meditating every day. I'm a spiritual guy. Maybe I can just transcend and meditate away all this huge amount of emotions that were coming up. But it was very clear to me at the time that I had some bad feelings, and I just could not let myself to feel it because the implications of feeling it would mean the marriage is over. I just couldn't handle that at the time. So I took all those feelings and shoved them down inside until I did all the shoving I could do, and they started coming out as back pain. That's the bottom line. One day, Lynn and I went to a movie. I was having all this bunch of thoughts coming up, and I had been reading a relationship book by a guy named Hendricks, he's a PhD in psychology. Great guy, brilliant guy. He's actually become a friend over the years and a mentor. And I read in one of Hendricks' book one time where he said this. This is a quote. He said, "All emotions are gentle and short-lived, ... So he said, Hendricks said, all emotions are gentle and short-lived unless we resist feeling them. So Gay's saying all emotions are gentle and short-lived unless we have unconscious resistance to feeling them, in which case they build up and build up like a steam cooker. So I went to a movie with my wife, started having these thoughts coming up. I kept pushing them down and keeping a smile on my face. And meanwhile, in the middle of the movie, I got up to use the restroom and had a panic attack in the bathroom, man. And I was hyperventilating, and it was a mess, And I thought to myself, I can't go on in life like this. I can't leave the restroom and have her see me like this. And if I tell her these things, it's the end of the marriage. And then I remembered Hendricks' words, and I said to myself, you know what? You have to open up to the truth of what you're feeling, and you don't necessarily even need to attribute the why of why you're feeling it. Like I said, listen, what emotion am I feeling now when I think about all this stuff? It's fear. Let yourself feel the fear. And I allowed myself to open up to my emotional truth for the first time, and I stopped for a moment just attributing why I felt it. Maybe it's my wife's this or that attribute about my wife. When I did that, the panic attack went away. That was a very valuable lesson for me. It took a lot more work for me to just begin to notice what I was feeling, notice my emotional truth, not necessarily blame someone else for why I was feeling that way, and just just open up. So it became a process for me. I began to process my emotions differently and learn that it's okay to feel that. A lot of people out there, I think, are maybe like me. I mean, for example, people might be upset with their boss. They're pissed off at the guy. Most people think they have only one of two options. They think, you either punch the guy out or you have to take those emotions and shove them down inside so you don't upset the guy. And this is presenting a third option, which means notice what you're feeling, open up to the truth of what you're feeling. And as Gay Hendricks says, the emotions will be fairly gentle and short-lived. A good friend of mine named Matt Season is a hypnotherapist. He's taken Gay's, just really that one Gay Hendricks quote, and has taken it to heart, and it's almost the center point of Matt's hypnosis practice. Matt does a regression-based hypnosis, and he's not necessarily always trying to get rid of the emotions. He's trying to get rid of people's resistance to feeling their truth. The other thing that I noticed, which I was really happy with, is that, Gay Hendricks used to explain that all perception is projection, and he said when we're feeling strong emotions and we don't allow ourselves just to feel the truth of what we're feeling and we hold on to stuff inside, we tend to project and make it seem like someone else is causing these feelings in us. So that's what I was doing. I was feeling feelings and projecting that something my wife was doing or being was causing me to feel that way. When I opened up to my truth, I just took a big breath now. When I opened up to my truth, I stopped projecting all the stuff on her. Our relationship blossomed. Thank God. We've been together almost 20 years. This August will be our 20-year anniversary. We have a great kid. Family life's much better. Obviously, like any couple, we're always working on stuff and working on communication, but things, thank God, are very good now. So that was my experience about that. I hope, by the way, this is helping because, again, this takes stuff, I think when you're a mind-body physician, it's key that when you're working with clients, they don't walk out of the office saying, boy, this guy just told me the problem's all in my head. So hope we're making clear. Back pain, musculoskeletal pain is very real. It hurts like crazy. It's not in your head. But most commonly what's causing it is tension and spasm of the muscles, which can last for days, weeks, months, or years. And the muscles are tensing up to keep you consciously or unconsciously from getting in touch with certain strong, overwhelming feelings that are coming up. In my case, you can see I didn't want these things to come up because I was scared that it would be the end of my marriage. And in reality, opening up to my truth saved the marriage. All right, let's see. Okay. Anywho, that's about it. So, guys, thanks for listening. The John Sarno book that I used, by the way, which kind of launched me on this path, was called The Mind-Body Connection by Dr. John Sarno. Just as an interesting aside, I called Dr. Sarno a few years ago on the phone when he was still in practice, and I was thinking about going to New York and spending a few days with him, and I called Dr. Sarno. I said, Dr. Sarno, I'm thinking about coming out there. How long is the wait? Is it a 6-month wait or 2-year wait, or people just lined up to learn what you're doing and how you're getting these amazing results? And Sarno basically said to me, you know what? There is no wait. No one really is interested in what I'm doing, or very few people are interested in the technique. And what he's doing certainly defies the allopathic medical model, which is what how your MDs train, which basically says that the body needs medications or surgery to heal itself. So thank God that Dr. Sarno is so enlightened. Very thankful to Gay Hendricks. Gay Hendricks has a great body of work, guys. My personal favorite book of his is called At the Speed of Life. Talks about how our emotions are held in the body and how to free ourselves of a lot of emotional stuff. Another thing that Gay Hendricks is really world-class at is getting people to bring their consciousness into the body. Like we've said, if you want to get in rapport with your unconscious mind, which is the center where your emotions are, your feelings, your energy, you have to bring your attention into the body. Gay Hendricks has a bunch of great exercises for doing that. Some of the most powerful exercises for doing that are deep diaphragmatic breathing exercises and breathing exercises where you're breathing in and moving your body in certain ways and really being present with your body. Gay has a product that he sells through a company called Sounds True, and you can find it on Amazon and bookstores probably and on eBay. It's called the Breathing Box by Gay Hendricks, the Breathing Box. I do those exercises several times a week. They're literally life-changing. He's got some exercises where you breathe into certain parts of your body and combine that with certain movements, and it literally releases a lot of emotional junk and shame and areas where your body's locked up, especially in your back and your pelvis. It's world-class stuff. Highly recommended. So, guys, hope this helped. This is Dr. Eric Robbins signing off.